Hope everybody is doing well. It's a little chilly here in Durham, North Carolina, where I'm based at, and everything along those lines. But we're hoping that things get better and that the weather gets better. I think that they're saying it'll get better on this coming Thursday. So tomorrow is supposed to be like back in the 80s, which is what it was a few days ago, and everything like that. I know we've got a couple of speakers that are going to be speaking about some interesting conversations at the Hayti Heritage Center, one of the places that I work at when I'm not doing this stuff on Pod TV and all along those lines. So we've got Melissa Harris Perry that'll be speaking about her role in the media and all along those lines. So she'll be coming to the center on Saturday. And tomorrow, Mike Wiley will be in an interview with Adrienne Lynn Smith as part of the Keenan Institute, things that they've been doing on a regular basis. And they'll be talking about arts and activism, because a lot of people will know Mike Wiley from his role in doing a play about Emmett Till, and also from doing one about a gentleman that escaped slavery by hiding in a box and everything like that. So definitely there's a lot of things that'll be talked about at the center and all along those lines. And of course, we're looking forward to Taisha Coates coming, and I think that'll be in the summer months, if I remember correctly. It might even be in the fall and everything like that. And Britt Bennett will be part of the Hayti Dialogues as well. So there's a number of things that'll be going on, including some musical concerts featuring Yazara and other musicians as well. One of my coworkers, Monet Marshall, will be doing a piece as well that'll be talking about some political aspects of things going on, as well as justice and all along those lines. So I've got this amazing guest. I don't know how he's feeling about the NCAA tournament. My team did not do good, but I did see that at least one of the star guards will be making a return, and the other one said he'll be making a return as well. So that's some good news if you're a fan of the Marquette Golden Eagles, the way I am. They were the Marquette Warriors when I was in school, and Doc Rivers was in school at that particular time. He's been having some struggles with his Milwaukee Bucks, but that's okay. We'll see how that all plays out as well. But a lot of folks are excited about their team being in the NCAA, no matter who they are rooting for. I've got to figure out if I'm going to do a bracket, and if I'm going to do a bracket, when I'm going to do it. I guess I got to do it before Thursday, because by that time we'll have all of the first four teams out of the way, and it'll be the regular 64 teams, not the 68. I think might be some brackets you can do with the full 68, but if I was going to do one, it'd be with the 64, which means I've got till tomorrow afternoon, I guess at noon, to try to put together a bracket and all in that space. But I've got Ken Callison. He's a man that has definitely got some great ideas, because a lot of things are going on in the world. We know a lot of people are talking about what's taking place in global conflicts and all of the continents, it seems like, and everything like that. And maybe we need to be finding a better way to go about this whole situation, because a lot of folks are wondering about what's going on with the Middle East, and definitely there's that war going on with Iran that we're currently in the middle of, and everything like that. And of course, Ukraine is still in its battle of freedom with Russia, as Russia tried to invade them not that many years, well, about 3 years ago, I think it is now, or 3 or 4 years, because it's been a while now that they've been in the middle of that battle. It's hard to believe that it's been that long, but it has been a while that they've been in the middle of that battle and everything like that. But I'm gonna bring in Ken Callison, see what he's got to say about a number of these conflicts. There's even conflicts in Africa. I believe there's a conflict going on in Nigeria. There's conflicts going on in between Pakistan and Afghanistan, and a number of other conflicts that are going on in the world as well. It seems like every time you turn around on the news, there's another conflict that is taking place somewhere in the globe and everything like that. But there's got to be a better way. I mean, I know some people that are people of peace that will love the idea of maybe we can have a world of peace. I know that I've been teased on this particular show and other shows on the network, because one of my favorite songs imagines a world without war, without any conflicts whatsoever. And that, of course, was the very famous John Lennon song called Imagine and everything like that. So I don't know if you remember that song, but I definitely have great memories of that song and all along those lines. And he was imagining a world without conflict, but also a world without religion to some degree as well. But how are you doing today, Ken? How are things treating you in Arizona? You told me it's nice and warm or toasty where you are and everything like that. So how are things going in your part of the world? And tell us about this book that you've got, and maybe we can get a copy of it, since he had one copy of a book that he liked. Maybe we can get a copy of it to Trump and change some of his minds of some of the things that he's doing now and everything like that. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you for having me. Yeah,
Yes.
Arizona's great. Uh, So ready to talk about peace and the state of the world and maybe what we could do and why we're here and where we're going.
Why do you think we are here with so many conflicts and everything like that? Because, like I said, every time I turn around, there seems to be another conflict that is going out there, and it does seem like it's almost human nature to be in the middle of conflicts. I'm even thinking about some conflicts that I know that have gone on for centuries. I mean, Israel has been there in conflict for decades, but I'm thinking about even places like Ireland that had been in conflict for a number of centuries, and there are a couple of continents in Africa that have been in conflict for centuries as well. So, what do you think it is about human nature that causes us to not understand that peace is the way?
Well, you asked about 5 questions there, so let me try to remember them all. But and you brought this up right before the show.
Right.
At any given time, and this has been true for about 10,000 years, there's about 30 wars going on the planet at any given time. We've been at war as a species for about 10,000 years, at least institutionalized war. So peace is not the absence of conflict, it's the management of conflict, whereas war is the absence of management. And then you brought up, well, isn't this our nature? No, we are not violent because it's our nature. We are violent because we're in denial of our nature. We still don't yet know who we are. Once we discover that, our accomplishments will be unlimited. So we have yet to decide that our species itself has a value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you're right. A lot of times we don't think about that and everything like that. I mean, part of the thing that I think a lot of people would be wondering about is we have this mentality that we are the best species out there. Not saying that we're not, but the porpoises and other animals may disagree and everything like that. But is that part of the issue? Is that we have got this notion that we're the top of the totem pole, and therefore we can do whatever we feel like doing. I mean, I even remember the notion of greed being great and everything like that, because I do remember that movie Wall Street and
Sure.
everything like that, and that was part of what that was all about. Was that greed was the better way to go, and not necessarily the peaceful ways, because even in the corporate world, there's a lot of dog eat dog kind of mentality and everything like that. So, what is your take on how we can get in a more altruistic kind of mindset?
Well, we have to change our consciousness, which is, sometimes difficult for people to grasp. But even Einstein knew that you cannot solve problems from the same level of a consciousness that created them. So we have to adjust. If we want to adjust our behavior, we have to adjust our beliefs and expectations.
Right.
And that involves a number of concepts. I guess you could say people really kind of come in two varieties. Those that say, yeah, I'll believe it when I see it.
Mm-hmm.
And those that understand, I'll see it when I believe it. So this book, The Way to World Peace, An Idea Whose Time Has Come, is a blend of metaphysics, quantum mechanics, history, philosophy. So it's attempting to change how we think. There is an ego element involved, as you brought up. We think we're, the top of the food chain. We can do whatever we want. But of course, in the process, we're destroying ourselves. So there's a number of existential threats. The militarization of the planet is just absolutely been out of control for decades.
Right.
There's an impending water crisis we haven't even begun to address. In the next 30 years, half the planet won't have access to clean water. We have pretty dire poverty on the planet, and we're collapsing the ecosystem. It's not just global warming. We're poisoning the air and the water and the planet. So these kind of bespeak of a species in crisis. But basically, we're trying to solve these problems while we're killing each other.
Yeah.
That's like trying to have a house party while the house is on fire. And then, of course, denying the house is on fire. So we kind of have it backwards there.
Yeah, that sounds like we totally got it backwards and everything like that. Because I'm even thinking about right now, we're in the middle of an oil crisis. You kind of alluded to it with the environment, and part of that is what's going on in Iran. And I'm thinking that both sides are bombing the depots and the suppliers of the oil. And we've even brought it up on this show a couple of times as well. It seems like we're running the risk of even further damage in the ocean and everything like that. Because I'm thinking that if we're bombing tankers, that means that there's going to be oil in the ocean, and that would be oil damage. And we know that oil damage has been a major issue for decades. I remember some of the great oil slicks that have happened both in our side of the continent, our side of the world, as well as then the Asian side of the world as well. But I'm just wondering, is that part of the problem? Is that we're not really thinking in terms of even the big picture when we're going into these global conflicts?
Well, there's the book, which is it's a pillar of the foundation. The foundation is timeforhumanity.org. But you did bring up a point about conflict.
Right.
And our understanding of conflict, the predicament that we now find ourselves in many ways, we're kind of the cancer on this planet.
Mhm.
And this book is an example of the vaccine that we can access to help save ourselves. The mission of A Time for Humanity is to unite humanity in order to save us from ourselves, because no one's going to do it but us. So we have the ability to do that. Believing we have the ability to do that is part of the challenge. But you do also bring up that conflict has been raging for thousands of years, and it has. But in many respects, it's not those who forget history that are condemned to repeat it. It's those who cannot forget history that are condemned to repeat it. So the motivations of revenge and retribution and justice and so forth kind of trap us. We trap ourselves in this cycle. It's an addictive cycle, actually.
It sounds very addictive, and it sounds like it's a major problem and everything like that. Because I know that part of it is that a lot of people that are leaders also get a little bit of a narcissistic view of the world and everything like that. We've got a show here on the network called "Where's the Love" that talks about the epidemic of bullying, and it seems to me that that's part of the problem that is going on globally. Is that there is a serious epidemic of bullying going on, whether that's in the notion of politics or even corporate America or a number of other things, because the two founders of that particular show talk about how it has impacted them. One is a motivational speaker, and I think she's a teacher, if I'm remembering correctly, and I know her son is a musician. So they talk about how it's impacted them both from their school days all the way up to their days as adults in their respective fields and everything like that. So it's part of the problem that it is such a epidemic, this nature of bullying, that's part of the problem with trying to create a better world.
Well, you have most of this occurs. Feelings of inferiority or superiority really are rooted in fear.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, fear is used by most political bodies. It really doesn't matter whether the politicians are US or Russian or British.
Right.
Yeah, we've hired politicians for the last few hundred years to run the planet.
Mm-hmm.
How's that working for you?
Doesn't seem to be working well at all. Most of the politicians seem to be involved in wanting further conflict. I know that Kim Calhoun, who's one of the founders of the network, has talked about the notion of the common man being the ones that were in Congress in the early days of Congress. And we don't have that many common men. There might be a few in the current iteration of Congress. And I could even say that about other world bodies as well, whether that's the Parliament of England or whether that's the governing bodies of Russia and China. So you can go either communist or capitalist. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of common sense folks that are running things.
Well, we need to learn to run peace as a business, just like war is run as a business.
Mm-hmm.
War is a very profitable business.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we need to run peace with the same budget and effort and enthusiasm and marketing that war is run. it's no longer really just the military industrial complex, as Eisenhower had warned us about. It's the military industrial corporate political educational and media complex.
Mm-hmm. But how would you break that complex? I guess that's the first question I've got to you, because it is such a common thing that anytime there is a economical problem, and this is anywhere in the world, the first instinct is to go to war in order to quote unquote alleviate the problem, even though we know that in a lot of ways it creates more problems and everything like that. But that has been a common strategy, and that would be what some people have argued might have been the reason that got us into the various world wars, and definitely the Vietnam War and a number of other things, because as you just said, people think of it as a engine driver of the economy.
Well, it does start with awareness and acceptance, but we have used deterrence for 10,000 years only to have 10,000 years of war. Deterrence doesn't deter war. That's as obvious. We've been at war for 10,000 years. Deterrence doesn't deter war, it deters peace.
Mm-hmm.
What we need to deter is our reliance on deterrence. So typically we kind of get things backwards, and this is just another example of that.
Yeah, it sounds like another example of us getting things backwards and not really understanding what's going on in that sense of how things are being handled and all along those lines. And I know that I've talked to other peace activists. I mentioned Nadine Hack and everything like that. So how can we get this kind of mindset into the minds of the world leaders, or is it going to have to be something that started from the bottom up? I mean, a lot of the peace movements, whether that was Gandhi or whether that was Martin Luther King or whether that was a number of others, were common citizens that were bringing their thoughts to the forefront, and then the leaders kind of followed them. They didn't actually start from the leadership and all in that space. But I was just wondering, how can we get it in the mindset of a Netanyahu or a Putin or even a Trump that this is a better way to go versus trying to be in conflict mode all the time?
Well, I think we need to get it in our mindset first. I don't know that you're going to change the political environment if you haven't changed your point of view. Right. In order to have peace, we need to understand what it is, and we need to have it internally as well. You're not going to have world peace if you do not have peace of mind,
right,
and vice versa. So, in many respects, humanity prays for an answer that it already has. It prays for peace when we already have that, and people look at me like I'm crazy and say, "Well, what do you mean we have peace? Have you seen what's going on out there? It's insane." Yeah, it's a mess. Yeah. That doesn't change the fact that we still can achieve whatever we decide we're going to. I think it was Aristotle that said, whatever a man has the ability to do it, he has the ability not to do it. Okay. So let me give you an example. Let's say, imagine you live in a city and you decide to take a drive into the country, and you're driving down a dirt road and you see a farmhouse in the distance, and you go up to the door and you ring the doorbell, and say an elderly man answers. You can tell he's very sad and forlorn, and you ask him, why are you so sad? And he says, well, I can't get to the city. It's way too far to walk, right, and nobody will visit me. So I live alone. I'm a prisoner in my own home. I'm isolated. Mm-hmm. Say, well, but you have a perfectly good car in the driveway. And he says, well, yeah, but I don't know how to drive it. And you say, well, I'll teach you how to drive the car. Right. And then he says, yes, but I'm afraid to drive it. Mm-hmm. This is the same with peace. The car's in the driveway. We're afraid to drive it. There is a risk to peace, but there is a greater risk in not pursuing peace.
Yeah, well, one of those greater risks is of not pursuing peace, and you kind of alluded to it in your book and in some of the press releases I've read about you and everything like that, is this notion of a widening inequality. And definitely that's been something we've been seeing going on in society, whether it's what's going on with ICE or whether it's going on in race relations and a number of other things. So is peace going to help us have a more just society and a more fair society in that regards as well? Because I do know that part of what you talk about is that there is widening inequalities, not just in terms of race and ethnicity, but also in terms of gender and even in terms of orientations and a number of other things that are markers of people's identity and everything like that. So, how will peace work in us having a better understanding of people's differences and being acceptable of people's differences?
Well, inequality is just an expression of fear, and
Mhm.
equality is an expression of trust. So when you believe in lack and limitation, when you believe that negative behavior will result in positive outcome, you're deluding yourself.
Right.
So it's again a matter of how we think, because what we think and believe and invest in is manifested in our world exactly as we expect it to be.
Mm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything like that. So I can see that manifestation is something very common. I know a lot of the Eastern religions have talked about manifestations. Now, one thing that you said earlier as we were getting prepared for this and everything that surprised me, and I mentioned another author that had similar views and everything like that, is how your book has been received by the different entities out there. Like the Republicans apparently love the book, the Democrats apparently love the book, the liberals love the book, the conservatives love the book. So I just wondered, what are you finding that they are finding in commonality that is the reason that they like it, and what are they hearing in your message that the other people aren't hearing? So it sounds like they are each having maybe selective hearing, because I do know that that can exist in education as well. So they're hearing the part of the message that resonates with their own worldview. So I just wondered your thoughts around that, because I do know that there is this whole notion of selective hearing and that we hear what is going to further our own goals and our own thought patterns.
Well, it is natural that we view things from our own belief systems, and
Mhm.
and I have noticed that people that are conservative think this is a conservative book, and people that are liberal think it's a liberal book. So I think I just hit a nerve, and I think that nerve is that it provides hope and a path to achieve this. And because our journey, Mark, is either together or not at all,
Right.
we no longer have a choice. We don't have the luxury of indulging our egos in conflict to feel superior or strong or whatever. We talked earlier
Mhm.
about an addictive cycle.
Right.
So, take for example, an alcoholic or a drug addict. They'll come up with any excuse, to continue their addiction. They'll say, "Oh, I only drink because I lost my job, or I went through a divorce, or I'm sad, or I'm in pain, or I can control it anytime I want, and it's not really a problem." And whatever excuse the addict doesn't come up with, the codependent will come up with.
Right.
They'll enable that addict. They'll say, "Oh, well, they need to do that, and they'll be getting over this soon, or whatever." So this same pattern occurs in geopolitical issues. You have the drug dealer that provides the drug to the addict. That's how the drug dealer makes their profit.
Right.
And you have this same thing. So you have the addict in the militarization of the world, which are the governments of this planet. They are addicted to security and control and power. Absolutely addicted. You have the drug dealer themselves, which is the defense industry, because that's how they make their profit. They provide the tools to the addict to enable that addict to achieve their goal. And then you have the populations who are basically codependents that enable and justify it. So it's the same addictive cycle that you see on a personal level.
Isn't part of the other problem that exists that it is so addictive that it is definitely gone deeply into our culture and everything like that? Because I'm thinking about the amount of times that I have watched police shows and even other kinds of crime dramas and a lot of other things that exist on TV. And how many times do we see people in the conflict by some form of violence, whether that's murder, whether that's other forms of violence as well, even robbery and stuff like that. Now, they are usually met with justice at the end, but even that justice can be heavy handed. I know that I was a fan to some degree of Walker, Texas Ranger, but if I was to look at the body count on some of these TV shows, you can see where peace might have a problem because there's a lot of bodies that are thrown around on those images and everything. And that's one of the complaints people have. Not saying the only complaint, but one of the complaints people have about video games is that they are very much violent oriented. Not all of them, but some of them are. So I was just wondering your take on how much of it is the fact that we have made this mainstream.
Well, we do tend to glorify violence because it gives us a false sense of power.
Right.
But it's extremely destructive. We soon will know our capacity to exist within our own presence. So maybe we should understand that this challenge is internal primarily and then external secondarily.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. It's got to get ourselves together first before we can start solving the rest of the problem. Now, you were admired by a gentleman that I know a lot of folks have a great deal of respect for and everything like that. He wrote a book basically about what the nature of the world is, and it sounds very similar to your own view and everything like that. So I was wondering how you managed to attract the insights and the attention of the legendary Carl Sagan when you've come up with these books and everything like that, because Carl Sagan is definitely somebody that is well known. I've got a couple of friends even here on the network that are big Carl Sagan fans and everything like that. So how did you manage to catch the attention of this legend, and what are some of the things that y'all shared in your conversations, if you had conversations, and all along those lines?
Well, Carl Sagan is, of course, was an incredible human being.
Right.
In my opinion, we probably still exist on this earth due to two people, John Kennedy and Carl Sagan. We were ready to play with nuclear weapons until Carl Sagan had pioneered his theories on nuclear winter. But I ran into Carl and had corresponded with him. My first book was about nuclear war. So I was an expert in that subject. I had corresponded with Linus Pauling and Carl Sagan and a number of politicians and world leaders. And I had done a survey on nuclear war, which I think it's still the only survey that's ever been done on that cross correlates against a number of demographics. What it did is it kind of revealed what our psyche is surrounding the indulgence in nuclear weapons, which is kind of, if anything, it bespeaks of a species in crisis. It's a little odd to believe that for human beings to believe that we need 12,500 nuclear weapons so we'll be safe. It's a little bizarre. You know, we have a third of the population of the planet is starving, and the other 2/3 builds weapons to kill the only healthy members. So I had corresponded with Carl Sagan. He used some of my research in one of his books. Just a wonderful man. But I think he was very progressive in his thought. And this goes for Linus Pauling and others. This message is the same message. My message is the same as it's been. If you Mahatma Gandhi or Christ or Buddha or Abraham Lincoln or Paul Simon or Neil Armstrong or Carl Sagan, the message is the same. It's maybe framed differently for today's audience, but
Yeah,
maybe humanity has a learning disability or something, because what we're doing isn't quite working. Now we are beginning to understand our role on this planet and within ourselves. And I do believe a convergence is taking place, that awareness and that belief in ourself is manifesting, and you can see it happening. And regardless of the noise, the war, the poverty, the conflict, the disease, and the collapse of the environment. That's all noise. We don't have to engage in that. And some of this, Mark, comes back to our concept of both evolution and survival of the fittest.
Yep.
So we believe that evolution creates intelligence. As the eons go by, as we evolve, we become smarter. But that's really not the way it works.
Mm-mm.
Evolution does not create intelligence. Intelligence creates evolution. Intelligence existed long before humanity was here. Intelligence is what created the universe. Intelligence exists in all life forms. So as we avail ourselves of that intelligence, then we evolve. We are in charge of our own evolution. Evolution is not something that happens to us. It is something we direct.
Well, so we directed ourselves and everything like that. As you were saying that, I was thinking about some of the great leaders in terms of even creating some of these weapons of destruction and everything like that. And a lot of times they regretted it. I'm thinking about the great Albert Einstein and how he was involved in the creation of some of the nuclear weapons and everything along those lines. And there were others as well. And they've even, since that time, and of course they've passed on, but they did come out against what they had created, realizing the danger that they had put society in and everything like that. But then you've got people like Lindsey Graham, because I just heard a recent quote. I was watching some of the stuff on the internet and everything along those lines, and he was basically saying that people would not say we made a mistake when we flattened Germany and when we flattened Japan, and he was arguing that we should flatten Gaza, which sounds to me very much of a hawkish attitude and everything. So there's still war hawks out there that have this kind of mindset and everything like that. So do you feel that they are a less prevalent part of our society, or are they still too much of a prevalent part of our society, and we just have to find ways to tone down some of their rhetoric? Because like I said, I was shocked when I heard that on I think it was on his maybe even Instagram or TikTok account and everything like that. But it was definitely a message that he was putting out there, basically encouraging Israel to flatten Gaza and everything like that. And we've heard similar kind of stuff from others in other parts of the world.
Well, it's not that there are not threats out there. It's how we deal with those threats. Mm-hmm. And yes, there have been times throughout history where military action has been necessary, but now we are facing the point where the necessity is to curb our reliance on the military. So take World War II, and there aren't any World War II veterans left, but at a time they would say, well, if we hadn't stormed Normandy, Hitler would have taken over the planet. And that probably is true. But that was the truth then. That was the reality then. The reality now is if we don't learn to curb our violence, we will destroy ourselves. So there is a learning here that needs to take place. Hatred is a learned behavior. It can be unlearned. And once you become aware that peace is coming, then you have empowered yourself. We need to educate our children to not only expect peace, but to be prepared for it as their right.
Yeah, that makes sense. They definitely do that as a right. Because I'm hearing, and I don't have any kids of my own, but I do have two nephews, that there's even talk of bringing back the draft and everything along those lines, which I am not a big fan of, partially because of having those two nephews, one who's going off to college, so he would definitely be of draft age, and the others who's only a year behind him. So they're both coming up on that year where they would probably be looked at as part of the draft should they go back to that notion and everything like that. So definitely I can. But like I said, that self-perseverance, not just of my own family tree and everything, but also just family members and everything like that. So I do know that I try to probably be caring and wanting my nephews to live a very long life. I mean, I'll be 64 in July, and I would love them to make it to 64, just like I hope to make it to 100 or above. I would love them to make it to that kind of age and everything like that. So I'm hoping that they have a very long life ahead of them and are just now beginning their journey, with the first one going off to college and the second one following behind them and everything like that. So how important is the education aspect? Because I know that's part of what the network talks about is the importance of education and how we're not teaching the right things in education and everything like that. So what is your take on education and the importance of education in framing this conversation?
Well, I think we need to raise our children with the expectation of peace.
Mm-hmm.
It will be hard to materialize if you don't expect it to happen.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, it'll be hard to materialize if you don't expect it to happen. But you also mentioned earlier the nuclear bombs and the nuclear weapons that are out there. And I know that there are some people that would say that that is a form of deterrence and everything like that, that we would never drop the bombs and that we would never destroy the world in that sense. And that is part of the reason that we need to maintain those weapons. I mean, I'm sure that that's the same argument that they give in Russia, in China, and would probably even give in Iran if their weapons hadn't been massively destroyed. But I'm sure that that is the logic of the world leaders, is that by having the weapons, we are stopping the nuclear war from happening and everything like that. And there's even this notion of survival, but some people are thinking that we might even be heading toward that notion of Idiocracy, which was a TV show or a movie, if I remember correctly, and everything like that. So what is your answer to those people that are saying we've got to have these war weapons, whether it's nuclear power or whether it's tanks, in order to deter folks? I mean, you even hear that sometimes in peaceful protests in terms of what's going on in the United States, because we've heard that we got to have even the police force have these massive weapons in order to stop the protests that might be taking place and everything like that. That's one of the arguments that people give for there being military type weapons in our police force.
Well, the theory that, well, we need nuclear weapons and the nuclear weapons keep us safe, that's the same as saying, we need disease. Mm-hmm. You don't need disease any more than you need nuclear weapons. And for those that say, well, we'll never use them, well, number one, we already have. And number two, every year that goes by increases the risk. It doesn't decrease the risk. There's a number of scenarios that could lead to the use of those weapons. But the only true safety is in eliminating them. And I will tell you now, together, if we can align our minds and our hearts, we can eliminate nuclear weapons from this planet in the next 15 years. It is absolutely achievable.
And how would that? Well, that's one of the questions people have, and I don't have the answer, but you've done a lot of research in that. How would we get rid of the nuclear weapons? Should we choose as a species to get rid of them? Because that's one of the things that people talk about is, if we have the weapons and they're made of these destructive elements, not all of the elements are destructive in order to make the nuclear weapons, where would we store them? Would we send them up into the space? How would we get rid of them is one of the questions I've heard people ask on a regular basis, is how do we get rid of something that we've spent decades accumulating?
Well, you can, dismantle and decommission them, and the physical act of getting rid of the weapons is not the difficult part. If you believe that you need them and they can't be and it's not achievable, you'll never do it. Right. You won't have the motivation to do it. So you had asked earlier, well, is this a grassroots movement or a movement from our leaders? Well, it's both. There are tens of thousands of extremely wealthy, powerful, conscious individuals that desire peace, that are influential, from sports figures to actors and actresses to some politicians to social media influencers. Right. We can coalesce that group and approach this from a top-down perspective at the same time that we're encouraging and investing in a grassroots movement, because humanity, we all know and we all realize that we want this. We just seem to be confused on how to get it.
Well, speaking of that confusion and everything like that, how do we get rid of because part of the other issue, and a good friend of mine who's on this network talks about this, oftentimes as well, and I brought it up a couple of times. It's how do we get rid of this? Because I know you even mentioned in your book this psychology of fear. Because there's this other notion of otherism. I mean, we've seen a lot of people painted as the bad guys because they are perceived to be evil in whatever form of evil takes and everything like that. I mean, I think we're seeing that to some degree with the Iranians. We definitely saw that with the Somalians. We've seen that with a number of other groups where they're just like, you find a way to make them the boogeyman and everything like that. So how do we get rid of this psychology of fear, which is very prevalent in Western society, but I would argue it's prevalent in world society, where this psychology of fear that person on the other side is your natural enemy and therefore you should not like them and everything. I think that's part of what's going on in Afghanistan and Pakistan, having friends in both of those societies and everything like that, and even Pakistan and India to a degree as well. So how do we get rid of this whole notion of the psychology of fear?
Well, fear is an ancient energy, and if you continue investing in that, you'll continue experiencing it. But the concept of otherness, that they are other, they are different than us, therefore they're worth less than us, therefore we can kill them.
Right.
So when we believe in other human beings as being different, whether it's their religion or the color of their skin or whatever, we also at the same time diminish our own self-worth, because any engagement in violence or anything that dehumanizes others also dehumanizes us. So it's in our own interest to reject fear and embrace love.
Right.
I think it was Jimi Hendrix that said, when the power of love overcomes the love of power, we shall know peace.
Yeah, that makes sense, because a good friend of mine does a funk show that I produce. It used to be on this network, but now it's on his own network and everything like that. But there is a very popular funk musician by the name of Bootsy Collins, and he actually has a song called "The Power of One," and that's really what that is. Notion is that we are all kind of like under. We are the power of one, so we are all in having that divine connection and everything like that. It's basically what it amounts to and everything like that. But I don't know that we all understand that and everything like that. I love this notion that you got, that we've got to finish humanity's evolutionary journey. So what do you mean by that and everything like that? Because I mean, we all know the story of the dinosaurs, and the dinosaurs disappeared after not completed their journey, or maybe they did complete their journey. So what do you mean by we need to finish our evolutionary journey?
Well, this comes back to the concept of survival of the fittest. And again, that's a misconception. And again, I think politicians tend to use that in the wrong way. Survival of the fittest doesn't mean survival of the strongest. It means survival of those that are best able to adapt. So if there were a nuclear war, the cockroach would be probably the surviving species, the best able to adapt. So we must adapt to ourselves in some respects and our behavior. So that comes down to an investment as well. You can't just sit on the couch and do nothing and expect the world to change.
Yeah, that makes sense. Speaking of the world changing and everything like that, I want to come to another part of your career development and everything like that, because I think that it plays into our view of each other as well, because there's definitely a part of the industry that you were part of that sometimes plays into this notion of one being better than the other and everything like that. Because as I was reading about you and your background, I saw that you were also heavily involved in some of the research around the beauty industry and all along those lines. So I just wanted your take on that, because that's been a conversation even in various societies, where sometimes people will have this attitude that they are not given the same worth as others because of the way the beauty industry has crafted it, and even the toy industry. Because there was a famous movie, unfortunately, the person that did it just recently passed away, that being Dante James, and he did a movie called The Doll, where they gave a number of African American women a white doll versus a black doll, and they went and gravitated more to the white doll than they did the black doll, even though the black doll represented more of their own culture and everything like that. So I just wanted your thoughts on that, because you did some serious work in the notion of the beauty industry as well. And you hold 3 patents in the beauty and medical industry. And I am here in Durham, which is the home of GlaxoSmithKline and Pfizer and a number of other parts of the industry that unfortunately plays into the war industry as well, because a lot of times, as we saw with COVID and other things, they are making a profit off of some of the things that they are doing.
Well, my professional background economically in business has been in a number of industries in corporate America and so forth. I've started a couple of my own national companies. So I've been very much an entrepreneur my whole life. That's just how I've made a living. This call and this cause, really, I had recognized at a very early age, perhaps as early as age 5.
Wow.
So this is really more of a life purpose and a calling. What I've done professionally and economically has been great. It's been certainly a challenge to navigate the business world over many decades. But yeah, regardless of the industry, whether it's the defense industry or the beauty industry, there is an appeal to our ego.
Right. There's definitely an appeal to the ego and everything like that. As I mentioned before, one of our founders, and I think he would love to hear your thoughts about that industry just really quickly. And I want to get back to the book and everything like that. But Nick Palveda, one of the 2 founders of the network, founded a pension company, a pension insurance company and everything like that. And I did see that you built a nationally recognized company by creating a state-of-the-art online insurance processing system that he might even be familiar with as well. So what is your take on the insurance business and everything like that? Just so that I know that Nick would get mad if I didn't ask that question, since I looked at your background and saw you had some insurance background as well.
Well, insurance is an interesting industry. I've been in it for many years. It's been around for thousands of years. So it's the one product you hope you never need, but it certainly serves a purpose. I think there's a number of industries that tend to dominate economies. Insurance is one of those, but it's certainly not the only. There have been a lot of changes in the last several years in the business environment in the United States and elsewhere. I do have a concern that in many respects, the rest of the world is surpassing us in their investment and regulation of business. I think we're becoming more restrictive and conservative, and I think that's going to be detrimental economically. I think we're drifting probably towards socialism more than our founding fathers thought we should. I think there's a number of aspects to how we run the United States that have some concerns and some opportunities.
Yeah.
So the world very much needs the United States to honor the goals and commitments that we started out with, because we have drifted very, very far from the freedoms and the joys and the goals that we once had. Mm-hmm. And we talked, Mark, a few minutes ago about some of the threats to humanity, but one of them is the loss of joy. And I think that's a significant threat, even though it's intangible. I think that's so very basic to our survival.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because that's actually been a theme of this show quite often and everything. Because actually during the pandemic, I was part of the group that was a audio puppetry troupe and everything like that, called the Funky Eye Puppets and everything like that. And it was run by IDC, who was a IPC, I Paint Creatures. And he's a part of the George Lucas disciples and all along those lines, because he actually worked with George Lucas and everything like that. But in his training of us, some of us were people that had been in the acting field or in creative fields, and others were not in those fields. Matter of fact, I think one of the ladies was a real estate agent, if I'm remembering correctly, and everything like that. And that being said, I do know that he would try to get us to understand the joy of play and everything like that, because it seems like as we get to be adults, that joy of play is gone. One of the things that I admire about I mentioned my nephews earlier, that I admired about them when they were first born and everything, is that he took them out on field trips and would show them nature and would show them the bugs and the other animals of the world and would give them to have that natural curiosity, which I feel that they still have as they are now going into their teen years and heading into adulthood and everything like that. So, but I do know that even when IPC was talking to us, he'd be like, y'all have got to get out of your 9 to 5 mindset and get back to that notion of play. So it does seem like we have gotten away from the notion of play and everything like that. So I brought that up on a couple of these shows, but I just wanted your thoughts around that, because it does seem like that is a problem of society, that we are so much in the rat race and the kind of like getting the next biggest car, the next biggest house, the next biggest whatever you're pursuing and everything like that, or pursuing in relationships and all along those lines, that we have gotten away from the notion of play.
Well, I think we have, and I think to some degree our reliance on technology as a substitute is a risk. Children staying in their rooms and on their phones constantly instead of going outside to play, I think we're finally discovering there's a risk to that.
Right.
Because technology is not going to solve the longing that we have in our hearts.
Mm-hmm.
We've had tremendous technological advance in the last 100 years, but our world has not become better.
No, the world hasn't become better at all. Speaking of the world not becoming better, what is your thoughts? Because it is a major concern, and it sounds like if we go into the peace mode, then maybe that's the way that we can solve it and everything. Because one of the main issues that people are concerned about a lot is the notion of poverty and how big poverty is in society, but also the notion of housing. I know that there's some people that would love housing to be a right, that we all have the right to a house and everything like that, even though we know that real estate agents will not like that and everything in that space, and the corporate housing industry would definitely not go for that in that sense. But I just wanted your thoughts about this whole notion of how maybe being a man of peace and creating a world of peace can make this a better world, in the sense of the economic disparity that exists where we have so much poverty in the world. Because right now there is tons, and you kind of alluded to it a couple of times during the show, there's tons of poverty, and sometimes that poverty is what is creating some of the war conflicts.
Poverty is a great cause of war, as the impending water crisis could be. But poverty is just a symptom. Poverty is just an expression of our fears and our confusion.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a reality for us because we have not accepted who we are as a species, and even in many cases, individuals. So there is, in some respects, a spiritual awakening that also has to happen. We are not physical beings walking around the planet having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience. So once we begin to accept that otherness of other cultures and people will be healed. We need to heal ourselves. There is a way to do that. We're beginning to recognize that it's no longer a choice. And I do believe not only will humanity survive, but it will thrive. And I think one of those avenues is space exploration. We can turn our defense industries, instead of using those resources to kill each other, we can use those resources to explore other worlds. And the defense manufacturers will probably make even more profit doing that.
Yes, so, they would definitely make a lot more money doing that. The space exploration, kind of like going to the ways of Star Trek and some of those great science fiction movies and everything. But you just alluded to something, because we talked about it on this network a couple of times. And part of the problem with, because I do agree that we are spiritual beings. I kind of alluded to that with the power of one and some of the other things that I've talked about on this particular show and everything like that. But we also know that religion has been a great cause of war and everything like that. I want to say that it's one of the number one causes of war is religious differences. So how can we balance that? Because I remember, even I mentioned my dad earlier, but one of the other things he did was he brought me and my younger brother to watch a special from, I think it was Ted Koppel or Peter Jennings. It was one of the great anchors of the past and everything like that. But it was showing the world's religions and how they have much more in common than they do in difference. And that was both Eastern and Western religions. Now, our religions have extreme elements and everything like that, even the Eastern religions. But it was showing that there's a lot more commonality within the religions than there is differences. But we know that whether it's the Jewish versus the Muslims, whether it's Christians in the Crusade, or whether it's a number of other things, that religious differences has been a major reason to go into war, because you want to convert the people to whatever your perceived better religion is and everything like that. So how do we deal with that conversation? Because that is one of the major elements of fear that exist in the war, in the world, is this notion that, I want to go to heaven and I want to be there with the percentage that's going to make it and everything like that. So my way is the only way, because we know a number of religions are that way, and they are of various styles of religion, because it's definitely in some Islam thoughts, it's in some Christian thought, it's in a number of thoughts that are out there. So how do we get past this notion of religion as a justification for war?
Well, you are correct that a lot of war, especially historically, the root has been differences in religious beliefs.
Right.
It's a little hard to grasp that we would kill each other because we disagree about who God is. But in my opinion, even though religion is designed and supposed to provide solace and comfort and hope and unity, that's not the practical reality. In my opinion, religion is basically the commercialization of spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And that when you do that, then you end up with conflict, because now you're into a commercial venture.
Right. Yeah, and I agree with you on that, because there was a whole notion within the African American religious philosophies of prosperity ministries, and I was never a big fan of those, because it was kind of this notion of, you're going to make this great amount of money while you're here, and then you'll also hopefully be able to take some of those, I won't say take the riches, but take some of the gains to the next level, whatever that next level might be, and everything like that. But I do know that there has been this notion of prosperity religion, and it's not just in the Black church. I mean, there were some people who would argue that some of those Christian fundamentalists that were saying that, you had to send a certain amount of money before they could make it to heaven, was another form of prosperity religion. I think Oral Roberts did one of those kind of like speeches, and I know that definitely the Bakers did some similar kind of stuff and everything like that. So I don't think that it is race related. There's definitely some folks that have this mindset of gain and everything like that. So is that part of the problem with peace as well? Is that there's very much this materialistic belief that you've got to have the best toy, whatever the best toy is. I mean, even in weapons, everybody wants the latest drone and the latest drone technology. And of course, we know a lot of people in society have always wanted the best car. Maybe they wanted the Porsche, or they wanted the Jaguar, or they wanted the hot blonde woman if they were in the single space and everything like that, or they wanted the big house, the big mansion and everything like that. So it seems like society, and particularly Western society, is very still materialistic driven. I mentioned Wall Street, that great movie earlier, and everything, where greed is king and everything like that. Is that part of the problem with the peace journey, is that we are dependent too much on this notion of greed?
Well, to kind of answer some of those questions, really, Mark, religious hatred is no different than racial hatred. Hatred is hatred. Our indulgence in it sometimes varies slightly, but that generally comes from a lack of belief in lack and limitation. We have to get ours before they get theirs, or there's only a certain amount, and their goal is to impoverish us. We must fight. So that belief in lack and limitation does cause a lot of problems that we create ourselves.
No doubt about that. What would you do? You kind of mentioned space exploration, but what would you do with the companies that have made money in this effort to have a more peaceful world? We know that Lockheed Martin has definitely made a lot of money in weapons. There are a number of other people that made a lot of money in weapons and everything like that. So in this notion of creating a better world and a more peaceful world, what would we do with those companies, and what would we also do with the military bases? Because like I said, I'm in North Carolina. We've got Seymour Johnson, we've got Fort Bragg, we've got a number of other things that are very military oriented. I've got a cousin that actually served in the military and actually was in the Gulf during one of its early iterations and everything like that. I want to say that's when they found that Saddam had those golden toilets and all along those lines and everything like that. So he was serving at that particular time, and now he's doing work in I want to say warp technology and everything like that. So he has gone into the and he's also now a city councilman in his town in Georgia and everything like that. But what would you say to folks in terms of because they're going to ask if we have this notion of peace, what do we do with the military structure that exists?
Well, there are structures that exist that could be more beneficial. For instance, the United Nations, which unfortunately the 5 permanent members have unlimited veto power, and they have no enforcement ability. So this is why the UN typically does not make progress on issues. But redirecting resources from the militarization of the planet to other purposes is not the difficult part. There can be, and will need to be, at least to begin with, global peacekeeping force. Mm-hmm. There will be for a short time, perhaps warlords or violent factions and so forth. They really won't have much of any hope of succeeding because, and you brought up Mahatma Gandhi. Mm-hmm. Mahatma Gandhi and the Indian people achieved success over domination by the British through nonviolence. It's a great example of what can be done. So when even just a small fraction of humanity unites, that snowball will start cascading down the hill, and we'll find that momentum will be self-fulfilling. It doesn't really take a lot. It really only takes about 3.5% of a population for an idea to start to manifest. Mm-hmm. And before an entire group accepts it, you only need about 25% of that group. And then it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So we can get 25%, so we can get 3.5% of the population to actually buy into peace and 25% to actually eventually buy into it, then peace will become a self-fulfilling prophecy, if I'm hearing you correctly. So we got to start with the 3.5% that actually believe in the notion of peace. That will grow to 25%. And then from there, it'll go to hopefully 75, 100% and everything like that, if I'm hearing your the way that you're thinking about it.
Peace is incorporated into our DNA. Our instinct for peace and our instinct for survival are the same thing.
Okay. That makes sense. So you're saying that we naturally have an instinct for peace and everything like that, but we just are suppressing this natural instinct of ours for peace. Because you're right, a lot of people want peace of mind, which is the same as peace and everything like that, and all along those lines. So you're thinking that we have let ourselves buy into this notion of war is great and everything like that, even though we know that war is not great because it can cause a lot of heartaches. And I don't know any country that has succeeded. Is there any country that has succeeded in being a peaceful nation in the 21st century? I know that some people will say that the people in the Amazon, the very quiet people in the Amazon, may have succeeded, but they are also very isolated and everything like that. So is there any societies that you have seen that have succeeded in peace in the 21st century so far?
There are several countries that don't have a military, that don't engage in war. Man's larger industrialized, militarized societies, China, Russia, the US, parts of the European Union to some extent, these are much more of a threat than Luxembourg is. So getting control of our own societies is part of that. That's a little different in Russia than it is in the US, but it still needs to happen. In my particular belief, the government of the United States controls the people do not control the government. And I think that's a risk. I think we've gotten used to that.
Yeah, we've definitely gotten used to that. How much do you think the notion of rivalry also plays into our fight against peace and everything like that? Because I mentioned earlier that my team did not do that well this year in basketball and everything like that. But I also know that when Duke goes against the UNC, at least for those couple of hours that they are playing against each other, they are not thinking about peace. They're thinking about the best way that they can destroy the other team's will to win and everything like that, and definitely are trying to win the game in any ways possible without cheating and without causing injury. Even though I was just recently watching a documentary on the Detroit Pistons, and they had that whole bad boy attitude where they were basically ready to go to war at you and everything like that. So that was almost like a kind of glorification of this notion of being a warlike warrior. Because there are even some people that are proud of the warrior mentality. I mean, one of the most popular movies that was out last year was Wakanda Forever, which definitely talked about the whole notion of warriors and everything like that. I think the movie was actually Black Panther, if I'm remembering correctly, and everything like that. But what is your thoughts about this notion of people being so proud of the warrior mentality, particularly when we are so sports engaged?
Well, there's nothing inherently wrong with competition. It's competition of with an intent to destroy, quote, your enemy,
Right.
or to gain a superior advantage, which only makes you temporarily feel superior. But yeah, the glorification of war as is in many respects an illness. It's a sickness. It's a disease. That glorification, number one, is caustic. It's toxic. We have on this planet, and for about the last couple hundred years, an incredible proliferation of cancer as a disease.
Mm-hmm.
That is a manifestation of our thought and our behavior.
Right.
It is a sign that we took a wrong fork. I think World War II was a tremendous diversion for humanity. We, the entire globe being at war, the use of nuclear weapons, the Nazi death camps, we took the wrong path, and we are still going down that same path. We need to get back to the path we were on.
Yeah, and that wrong path has been there for a while. I was actually watching another thing on the social media yesterday, and that was actually talking about how Auschwitz was not the first war camp. There was actually one, I think, in Namibia, or one of the African nations, that was just as atrocious, if not more atrocious, because it had tens and hundreds of thousands of deaths, and they actually even required the women to peel off the skin of the body so they could then send the cadavers to Europe to prove racial superiority and everything like that. And there was a young lady that was saying that that was the kind of precursor, and where the Germans learned some of their techniques from, that they then brought into the German Holocaust and everything like that. So definitely that's just scary, the way that we have this mindset of trying to destroy people and make and belittle them, kind of that otherism that we were talking about earlier and everything like that. So it's very
well, examples of man's inhumanity to man are abundant.
Mm-hmm.
You can't use that as a justification to continue it.
Right. No, I agree, and definitely that's the mindset that some people are having in the leadership, is that there's this notion of just gonna like totally flatten the folks or go in and claim a country, as we did in Venezuela and all along those lines. But apparently we left their leadership still intact, even though we took the main leader out. But I don't know how much that war accomplished anything to your notion of peace, because like I said, we just took the main person out, but his second in command is still in control. So how much did we really accomplish by putting him up for trial?
Well, war does not really accomplish much except for the further expansion of more war.
And you mentioned something earlier.
It can temporarily alter a condition or a situation, but oftentimes the result of that is years later is even worse.
I agree. Speaking of wars and everything, we get ready to wrap up very shortly and everything. This notion of war being used as a terminology is also problematic as well because, I mean, like, I get why we say we have and had and still have a war on drugs and everything like that. But I know one of the great arguments about the war on drugs is how many people actually own the means to bring the drugs into society and all along those lines. So it might be some very rich and powerful people in various countries they can bring the stuff to, say, Compton, or bring it to Harlem and everything like that, or even bring it to the poor areas of South Dakota and everything like that. But not many of us own a plane or own a means to get the drugs there. So therefore, a lot of people are wondering how much is the war machine also involved in the drugs machine as well, or the drug trade. And that's something that I've never heard anybody really give an answer to and everything like that, because that plays into the notion of peace. Because part of the reason people sometimes get involved in drugs is because they are wanting to get what they consider a peace of mind or a better peace of mind and everything like that, even though we know that that is a misnomer. But that's why people will sometimes go into drugs or alcohol or other addictions that exist, that they are trying to find a way to get in a more calm nature and everything like that. But I don't know your thoughts. I know there was more than one question rolled into one and everything like that you've been teasing me about. But I just wanted your thoughts around this notion of war and how war is impacted by other parts of society's battles as well, including the drug battle.
Well, drug addiction or other addictions, alcohol and so forth, are really a spiritual crisis, a spiritual cry. It's a lack of belief the individual has in life or themselves. So it can be very debilitating. As far as drugs and international commerce and war, that's not necessarily new. I mean, just look back to the CIA importing massive amounts of cocaine to sell to the American public to fund the war in Nicaragua, to fund the Contras. So that has occurred throughout history.
Yeah.
Whether it's slave labor in centuries ago, or whether it's the domination of a society today, internally or externally, it's all the same thing.
No, that's definitely all the same thing and everything like that. Because I was thinking, I remember there was a great person that they made a movie about here in Durham, North Carolina. It was one of those drug kingpins, and I want to say that part of his story was that he was around during the Vietnam War, and he was actually literally importing some of those drugs in the body bags of some of the victims. And for all we know, that could be even still going on, because Iran, I think, has a major drug importation as well and everything. So that could be something that could even be coming to fruition in modern times, just like it did during the Vietnam War. Not saying that it is happening, but it would not surprise me if it wasn't revealed at a later date that something similar was going on in this particular conflict as well. But like I said, I hope that I'm wrong and everything like that. Now, something that people have been wanting to get rid of for decades, centuries even, and everything. And it sounds to me that if you can have your way, that we can actually accomplish this, is if we get rid of wars and we get rid of some of these ills of society and all along those lines, then we won't have as much need for people to go out and commit crimes, whatever those crimes are and everything. Because I know that there are a lot of people that are frustrated where prisons are placed, because a lot of times they're placed in downtown areas and all along those lines. And definitely there's an abundance of prisons, and prison is another commercial industry, because there's definitely money that's being made off of the creation of the prison system. And we talk about the prison system being part of the military industrial complex and everything like that, because there's even that whole notion of the school to prison pipeline. So if we can get this peace thing going, can we also eventually get rid of, or at least tone down the creation of, or the need for more prisons?
Oh, I think once you have a spiritual alignment, once you reduce fear, once you increase hope, that peace will manifest also on an individual level. And I think you will see individual violence drop dramatically. PTSD it stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. It's really post-traumatic spiritual disorder, because you've lost your belief in your fellow man or yourself, or both. So I think you'll see a dramatic reduction in individual violence. when society is not engaged in massive violence, I think you'll see a reduction. This is why you see the world's most industrialized societies, most competitive, most aggressive societies also have the highest levels of crime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. They definitely have a high level of crime in that sense and everything like that. Because as you were saying, I was going like, well, that could definitely be a major victory if we can get the prison system down. Because I know a lot of people have been wanting that for decades and all along those lines. So that would be a great thing to see happen in this peace movement. But as we get ready to wind down and everything like that, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and you've definitely brought me into some interesting ideas and thoughts, and definitely help that more people are listening. We usually air these shows multiple times, so there will be people that will be interested in your book. So if you can tell me the title of the book again and how folks can reach you if they're interested in learning more about the peace movement that you're part of, the organization that you're part of, and everything like that, as well as, and we've kind of alluded to it. One of the things I get all my guests to do on all my show is to give a message of positivity and peace, call it my own semi-ministry and everything like that. So definitely, if you want to give a message of peace that you haven't already given, then I'd love to hear that as well, because I get all my guests, no matter who they are, to do that on all the shows and everything like that. So definitely, if you want to share that and how you can be reached, and also your message of positivity.
Well, the book is called The Way to World Peace, an idea whose time has come. And I do go into why that time is now. And then you can get the book anywhere, Mark, Amazon, Kindle. They have Kindle and Audible and softback, hardback at Barnes & Noble. So pretty much anywhere books are sold. The foundation is called atimeforhumanity.org. And yeah, go there and at least become educated, get involved, subscribe to the newsletter, and we'll keep in touch. And you'll grow. It will give you hope. And that is the course. So do that.
Yeah, we definitely need to have that hope and everything like that, because so often we don't have that hope. Too many people are frustrated by the state of what's going on in the world, as we kind of alluded to earlier and everything like that. So it sounds like this book will give them more hope and everything like that. So before I play the video, because I do want at the end about the importance of education and the importance of educators that are not just the traditional educators, but also guidance counselors, janitors, and others that are in the school system and all along those lines. But why do you think that the 21st century, 2026, is the time for now for peace, when there's so many people that seem to be working against that? And I would say on both sides of the aisle. I wouldn't put that on one side of the aisle. I would actually argue that probably on both sides of the aisle.
Well, we talked a little bit about technology and how that can be a problem, whether it's AI or whatever, but it also offers some advantages. We are now more connected. We're able to communicate so much better. So that is a tremendous benefit. And I guess I'll end with this. There's a quote in the book where I bring up the point that if humanity will look, you will see the peace that is coming. And if we are wise, we will accept it. So we have to accept peace. And then we will experience it.
Yeah, that sounds like a great thing. Last question, and then I'm going to play this video just to get us on out of here and everything. How important was your own education in your life? You mentioned this being a life call mission of yours since you were 5, I think you said, and everything like that. So that's a victory in itself, because most people don't know what their life mission is at the age of 5 and everything like that. But you did have an idea of what your life mission would be in that sense and everything like that. But how important is education to you, and even the people that are behind the educators? Because like I said, my grandmother was a cafeteria worker. I definitely, but her first job was as a guidance counselor. So I definitely believe in the support system as well, even the janitors, because a lot of times the janitors know more about the school than sometimes even the teachers themselves do and everything like that. So how important is education in your own life, before I play this video to get us all out of here?
Well, I was raised in metaphysics and the sciences and Buddhism and so forth. So I was very, very fortunate. Very positive, advanced, enlightened environment. And enlightenment will be the key to our survival. So enlightenment is coming. Let's not reject it. And then we will be able to experience the love that is waiting for us. Our consciousness awaits us, Mark.
Yeah. You said that, and I know I said that was the last question, but something gets out of my head. I've had several friends of mine that have said that they think that we are in a enlightened period and that we are heading back into a more enlightened kind of a society. We know that there was the age of enlightenment that was, I believe, in the Greek period, and I'm a big fan of the Harlem Renaissance and things along those lines. And some people would say that that was a time of enlightenment, but there are some people that are saying that we are society and the world is being realigned, and this is going to be an enlightenment like we have never seen before.
Absolutely.
And I think you alluded to that a couple of times, that we're heading toward a new type of alignment that we have never seen any sort of before, not even the Enlightenment age that I alluded to with the Greeks. And I believe that was also definitely the Greeks and maybe even some of the other societies of that time, and even the Enlightenment of the Harlem Renaissance, which was more recent and everything like that. But it sounds like, from what I'm hearing from people that follow metaphysics and the followers of Buddha and others, it sounds like we're heading toward a true enlightenment that'll be much different than anything we've seen. And
absolutely. That is absolutely the case. I think this generation will witness the birth of humanity unto itself.
Oh, wow. That's a powerful note. And on that note, we're going to check out about these educators and what they've got to say about being rewarded and everything like that. But yeah, I've heard that before, that we're heading toward a greater generation. So that will be great news for my nephews. Like I said, I don't have any kids of my own, but they are, this year, they will be 17 and 18 coming up in August. So one was born in 2008, the other was born in 2009. So they're heading toward their teen year. Well, they're already in their teen years, but heading toward their young adult years. So it sounds like they could be heading towards some enlightenment as they are getting ready to go off to college. So both of them are college bound and everything like that. So I look forward to hearing what they learn in college, but also how they are addressing this new enlightenment and everything like that. So on that note, we're going to go play this advertisement, and it's been fun talking to you again, and I hope that I'll see you on some other shows as well. But it's definitely been fun engaging in this conversation with you.
Well, thank you very much.
No problem.
You bet. Bye-bye.
I won't fold, I won't drop until we on top. Only going non-stop. I won't fold, I won't drop until we on top. Only going non-stop.
I want to thank everyone for coming to the 2020 TAF Awards. This was a show like no other, people. This is the Grammys for dignitaries, educators, and support staff around the state of Oklahoma and worldwide. We cannot do this without the support of the people. So we thank you, I thank you, for being such a dedicated supporter to this movement for the Teachers Appreciation Foundation. I thank you.
I won't fold.